everyone. Welcome to the Dash Sisters podcast. Couple of changes for today's episode. As you can see, I'm solo hosting today because Maithili, our Dash sister Blue, has the flu. You can tell that I practiced that line. But Maithili is sick. So, to compensate for the lack of one speaker, we've invited a guest today who speaks for about 5 people. And this is somebody who grew up with us again in our boarding school that we went to. She was a junior from school, and she was a daughter of a house parent, which was our school's word for like a hostel warden. And so she would live with us the whole time. And so we have here today Apurva Singh. Hi, Apurva.
Hi,
Wait,
hi.
are you Apurva something else post Shadi?
No, I'm Apurva Singh. It's too difficult to change names on documents.
Apurva, why don't you start off by introducing yourself to our listeners? And right after, I'm going to ask you a question straight from Dash Sister Blue Maithili.
Oh, that okay.
Hmm.
So for people who don't know me, shame. You should have by now. Like, why don't you? But I am Apurva. I was the Dash Sister Junior in their junior in school, and I did live with them. I am currently also in Bangalore, and I do a bit of lawyering here and there, and that is, yeah, mostly that. Like, it's not that part is the least interesting thing actually. I also recently got into the whole marital. What's the thing called?
I don't know. The adjective is totally dependent on you.
The Grihast ashram is where I have entered.
Grihast ashram.
The Grihast ashram, yes. So yeah, that's about me.
Interesting that you said a lawyer thing is the least interesting thing about you, because Maithili's question to you today is, what are the 3 things that you are most excited about in your life right now?
Okay, so I think number one is just I'm really looking forward to being 30, entering my 30s in the next few years.
Apurva, you're not even close to being 30, please. This is our thing, right?
28.
That is like...
But you are like, okay. Let me finish. My God, कैसे host हैं आप?
You're coming to my show and insulting me, yeah.
Yeah, just because you're old and all doesn't mean so yeah. But I think I'm really looking for, like, I think I've been a junior in a workplace for a very long time. And I think in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been the A0, the A1. This, like, I had nobody to give work to. I was at the bottom of the barrel. And you're always like, everybody can yell at you. You're that youngest child in the organization. And no parent is like, has favored you in any case, right? I think I'm really looking forward to like shifting gears and becoming mid-level and, like kind of like being able to have a team that I'm responsible for, being able to like have my own juniors, which is so strange. But like, it's like when you become like, when you come to the girls' hostel in 9th grade versus when you're in 12th grade and you have all these new girls coming from the junior hostel block, right? You feel like you have, like, you're responsible for something. They're looking up to you for advice, like there's so much. And I really want to enter that form of like stability in life where I'd have worked for 7, 8 years by then. And I'd just be, like, I'd know what I want to do. So I think
you know the hostel rules, so you can tell the juniors how to live now.
exactly. And I can also see like some things that my bosses did, which I was not very happy with. And I think I've entered a place where I now understand some of it. And I'm like, okay, even if I understand some of it, I think I would deal with it a little differently. Or you kind of become the horrible senior that you used to be scared of. But I think it's just that discovery path I'm really excited for. I'm also, that's one.
Yeah.
I'm also very excited about like being in a place where I'm not rushed. Like I think, yeah, like, in your 30s.
Like life or work?
In life generally, because I think for all definitions now, and I think for all societal intents and purposes, I'm settled. Right? For all societal,
Yeah.
I'm settled. Like like nobody's like, "Arey, ye kyun nahi ho raha? Why are you not doing this? Why? What is the next job you're going to have?" Those things have been settled somehow. So now I can just try to figure out who I am when I'm not rushing for these things.
I think up until this point, we always had a next thing to do.
Yeah.
Like finish kindergarten, finish middle school, finish high school, finish your boards, then get whatever 12th grade, then get into a college, then you get a job, then you
Mm.
find a partner, then now it's like all that's done. you know,
Yeah.
fair. That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not rushed. Okay, that's
Yeah,
really
so
good.
I think the sad thing about our generation specifically is that a lot of next steps that our parents would have very easy access to has become very far for us. Like
Yeah.
my next step would ideally be buying a house,
Mm.
right? But that's it's very unreasonable right now.
Study after study says that's not
That-
for our generation's
Yeah,
fate.
exactly. So I know that's not in the books right now, which means I have it's sad that that's the case, but I also have the freedom to be like, now I'll travel. Like I have a stable job that I like, that I want to stay in for a few years. Because now I think I've gotten to a place at work where the prestige of the job is not that's not too shiny to me anymore. Like when you graduate college, especially in law school, you're always told, oh, go to this tier 1 firm, that tier 1 firm. If you've done that, you've made it, etc. Having done all of that, I think now I'm in a place where that's not shiny to me anymore. Just aspire to be happy in the job I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's, yeah.
You still have a third. Lot of exciting things are going on in your life.
What is my third? Okay. I think number 3 would be to kind of, and I'm really excited about, and this is going to be so childish after the 1 and 2, is that BTS comes back this year. So I'm really excited about that. You have to understand this is a big deal to me, okay?
Yeah. Can you explain this to me? This is exactly why I'm more 30 than you are. It's because I have no idea what the BTS craze is, what is happening. No, tell me, why are people losing their mind?
So, okay, for me, it was always, the way my mother reacts to BTS is how I used to react to it, right? I'm like, ye kya matlab makeup karke, like, kya, what is this? Right? And it also came from like a prejudicial space when I was 18. But I think now, I look back and read some of the lyrics and I was very used to see, Hindi music, the lyrics are always very poetic, very about love. It's very love heavy poetry in Hindi, right? English lyrics was more about the girl bossing. I think that 2000, I'm talking about 2000, like when we were in college time, right? Like it became a lot about girl bossing. Oh, I can, if it was rap, it became like, oh, I am so successful. I'm this, I'm so cool, I'm so this. I didn't feel represented. I was a single 18-year-old. I didn't feel I didn't find nothing caught my ear. So then I have these guys who are talking about how it's okay if you've failed a few times, or it's okay if you're things, depression happens, life happens. You don't have to be as good as it's just kind of the music really resonated with me. So I was like, okay, then also I am very used to not taking anything lightly, right? So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be an obsessed freak. That's how I operate. So yeah, I think so this year, again, my visa is not in yet, but I booked the Seoul ticket and I'll be going to the April concert in South Korea. So I'm very excited.
Oh my God.
But again, dependent on visa, South Korean government, please grant.
Please. This is our official application to the South Korean government. No, but your answer was the most Gen Z thing I've ever heard. So if you start with I'm 30 again,
hey,
I'm coming for you.
And these are allowed to be 30.
Yeah, I know, but you can't be like, oh, I'm feeling very stable because I'm in my 30s. You're not. I'm only not what you are. Only Maithili is, and she's brand new 30, that too.
But don't you feel like you'd be your coolest in your early 30s?
Oh, dude, I'm really excited about entering 30s. I feel this 20s and all is time pass. Just waste of time.
Yeah.
This is the era. This is the,
I agree.
I'm super excited. 40s I'm even more excited for, but I'm like, one by one we'll do.
Also, 32, you can't write UPSC anymore, right? When you're 32, I think.
These are...
So now my granddad can never tell me to get a government job.
Wow. Yes. Great plus point, I guess, for non-UPSC aspirants for a change. But yes. Okay. I love that. So this is such a quintessential Apurva thing, right? Is that we've already spoken for 20 minutes and I haven't even gotten to my first question yet. So I will ask my first question, God willing. So one of the things I think makes you, I think the most prime podcast candidate is because you have lived a school life that is both intriguing and deeply terrifying to me. Okay. As I said before, listeners, Apurva was a teacher child, as in her
Staff
mother was
student is the official name.
staff student. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, staff student, which meant that at any given point in her, and these were teen years, right? Any given point in her teen years, her best friends, her crushes, her arch nemesis, teachers who loved her, teachers who hated her, and her mom were all in the same campus, living, studying, working, everything together. And I just can't imagine what that was like. So please, let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Can you describe?
Okay.
I don't even know what question to ask about it because it's an unfathomable
No, I think
experience to
I
me.
have some structure in my head about but I'll tell you how to. So you know how Reliance Jio became a thing in 2016, right? 2016, 17.
Mhm.
I'm getting to a point, right?
I trust it. I
Yeah.
know you are.
So that was a time when, right, it's
Yeah.
always free to call people. But when we were in school, people had to spend money to call other people. So when a
Okay.
teacher had a problem with a child, they would think about calling because it's like outgoing call, maybe international parent, out of state parent, you don't know. They would like call and they'll be like, Arey, why to waste so much money? And just like reprimand the student then and there.
Yeah.
The issue is my mother was their colleague. He sat in the same staff room as these guys. So if Apurva has done 0.5% of something that somebody has done 100 of, Apurva's mother knew. Right? First, I think shout out to my mom. She handled it really well, even when she was.
She's a cool mom also. Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand from her perspective. So, for instance, something like dating, right?
Yeah.
My mother, with respect to me, was very open-minded when it came to dating. She said, you do you, whatever you're comfortable with, that's fine. But my mother also governed a few students whose parents weren't very comfortable with that. But equal rules need to apply to everybody. Right.
Yeah.
So she couldn't encourage me dating because other people would be like, why is she being a certain way to me? So for her, and she talked to me, she's like, Apurva, just make sure, if there's anything. I was not very open with her, right? I mean, you'd know.
Were you? I felt like you guys were such a sisterly mother-daughter duo.
Yeah, but I
even
think that
back then.
happened later. That happened much later in our relationship when I was as angry a teenager as anybody else, right?
Yeah.
So I was also like, "Ki, I can't have my mother know about my real feelings. Oh, it's icky to talk to your mom about how you feel.
Ma,
But
you don't get me.
you don't get me exactly. So whenever she used to hear about certain things about me, a part of her would be like, okay, this is fine. But another is like, hey, this is not something students are allowed to do. So I hope you're not. But in her own way, I think she dealt with it really nicely. But it was so awkward. Like your parents being okay with something versus your parents knowing stuff about you. Like I'm married right now and I don't say nice things about Nikhil in front of my mom now.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, why? Why should you know I love like, no. Also, it's not just about my friends being there, right? And my mom was a kind of a parent for these people as well. So they also were able to develop a relationship with her. So if I didn't like somebody, they would still be in my house getting advice from my mother.
Yeah.
But I understood that was her role and, it was what she did. And
Yeah, but how do you? That's what my thing is. So obviously, there's one part of this that's super complicated for your mom to navigate, right? Like she's both a parent to you and a teacher to you in some points because she has to, like you said, enforce the institution's rules and stuff.
Correct.
But she's an adult. You are not.
Yeah.
Right, you're still learning what your thoughts are, how to think, what is right, what is wrong. You're saying, yeah, I understood it because it was fair. You're still learning what fair even means.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all happening where she is in the same context as your peers and your social circle.
I'll give you an example. There was a friend I had when I was in 8th grade. Okay. This friend of mine started seeing a senior and the whole school was very well aware that this was happening. Because my mom was there, I don't think she approved of the relationship, whatever. She has come out and she's told me, I shouldn't see you around this girl anymore. Like, bad, this is like bad company and all of that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is so embarrassing. Can you not embarrass me? Because she was right. Like, in that context, I was I don't know if you remember, I was a very gullible child, which means like I would go out of my way to help my friends. Like if they are dating somebody, I'd go keep watch. Or, you know, I'd
Yeah,
like, so my mom felt like I was
You would facilitate willingly. Pass notes. Yeah.
exactly. So my mom always thought that I was very easy to take advantage of.
Mm.
So she thought this is what was happening in this situation. I later, maybe as an adult, I was like, okay, I see where you're going with this. I get it. But at that time, I'm like, this is one of my closest friends. Why are you like,
Yeah.
like now she knows my mom doesn't like her. Like, oh, what is wrong with you? So I think that
Oh my
was navigating friendships was, I think, more difficult than navigating a crush in school.
Mm.
Because my mom always saw through people who didn't like me and I never admitted it. I was like, what are you saying? She's obsessed with me. Like, what are you saying? And she saw another friend of mine who, at that point, I was not good friends with. She's like, that is a good person. And I was like, this horrible person, what are you saying?
Yeah.
She's like, no, I feel like these people don't have your best interest at heart. I was also 11 years old. I was like, you are being so, like, what is
You're
wrong?
like, you don't have my best interest in
Yeah,
heart.
you don't have my. But later it turned out, I mean, it's so stereotypical, but she was right. It was so bad. I hate
Yeah.
that she was right. It sucks.
No, but I also have this like friends of mine who I'm like, oh my god, this is the most perfect, pristine, amazing person. My parents are like, no, something is wrong. I'm like, you
Something is
don't
wrong.
get me. Same thing, opposite. Some person who I'm like least interested in, they're like, this person has a very good heart. I'm like, what I'll do with heart? You know?
Nishan, we have been
So-
mentioned here. Nishan. But they're talking about you, Nishan.
I mean, there is some backstory there, but listeners, that's for another episode. See, this is the problem with interviewing you. You know too much. Yeah. Okay, so that was like the childhood years. I think the next part to me that honestly was crazy startling was how do I'll tell you. There's a weird imagery in my head, okay? There's this little thing that's just hopping about and you like run to my bed and like in the dormitory and stuff like that and just be like hi and we'd chat and we'd giggle and that's the memory I had of you.
Yeah.
And then there's suddenly, like, couple of years later, law school and all happened. You were in Pune, right? You're in
Yeah.
Pune. So we are not exactly in each other's social orbit. Some transformation has happened over there. You come back to Bangalore. Suddenly, lawyer, corporate person. Like, suddenly I'm imagining you in like a pencil skirt and a blazer with a briefcase, you know? I'm like, how did this happen? But you did. So, like, you were talking initially about all of these, tier 1, tier 2 law firms, all of that. So can you tell us a little bit about what your life, career, those kind of choices, what drove that?
So I know it seems very different for people who know me now, but in college, I was very bottom of the barrel. Like I was not doing very well in college. I was getting backlogs sometimes. Like I was just very.
I don't believe that at all.
I
Apurva, you
know.
were such a padaku in school also.
Actually, so after 10th grade, what happened after I left the boarding school, I kind of went to a city school in Lucknow, which had 400 people my batch. And the first exam we wrote, right, I did very mediocrely. But I thought I studied more than I studied in school, like in 10th grade.
Yeah.
But I did very mediocrely. And that's when I realized that I was just a big fish in a small pond. That did something to me academically, which I could not recover until the end of law school.
Like a confidence hit?
That was a huge confidence hit where I was like, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, that drove me into like very bad places. Like, you will not believe this math board exam in 12th grade. I am preparing, I have a guide, and the first time I even open the textbook is the 12 hours before the board exam. I have never opened that textbook. I have not gone for a single class. I have bunked. Teachers don't think I should be writing because I'll be lowering the school's percentage. Like like that is happening. And I gave that exam. I am somebody who was obsessed with maths as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got a 55.
Huh.
And I don't think I have ever gotten a 55 in my life except that. And then I was like, okay, this just cements what I already knew, that I'm not smart enough. So I go into college with this mindset. I also don't do that well in college. Like my friends like thank God for my friends. Like they're giving me like notes. And before the exam, I used to have some friends who I used to tell them, keep out this, study that. I have friends doing that to me who are like making me memorize concepts and of law, whatever. And I've lost all interest in academics and all interest in doing well for myself, right?
Yeah.
But then something happened, which was COVID hit. When COVID hit, I went back home. And after that, I used to always do well in internships because I was good at, I was good at people. So I did well in internships. And there was this law firm who I had gotten an internship with for June of 2020. I told them that, hey, COVID's hit. I'm writing to them in like March, but I think none of your interns would be coming to office now, right? So can I just intern with you online? Just send me your queries online. I'll email them back to you or whatever. Online internships weren't a thing before that. So they're like, yes, we are going to start an internship pilot and stuff like that. So I do like 3-4 months with them. I think just COVID hitting and me graduating law school, out of those, I think 13 months, I had done 12 months in internships. I had not had any break. I was interning in one place, then 1 month break. And that 1 month was just finding more internships to do.
For context, listeners, Bar Council requirement is 5 internships. 5 months of 5 internships.
Yeah, I
that's
had
all.
done about I had done about 12 internships by the end of law school. And then I find this place and it tells me that, okay, we will give you something called a training contract. You work with us for 6 months. We like you. We convert you. I kill myself. I'm like, I need to do well here because this is my last shot of like achieving anything. Somehow I got converted there. That was my turning point. I think before that I was not even sure what I was going to do. I was looking at jobs in Varanasi, maybe some lawyer ke andar, some clerkship, anything, because I was like, I'm not going to get anything otherwise. So this, I think, opportunity really, it really turned the tides for me. I kind of realized that actually I am as smart as I thought I was at some point. It's just I wasn't confident enough to express it. So I worked really hard there. And then I got a recruiter come to me from a tier 1 law firm I had always thought I liked. Now, even though my firm it's a law firm, so it was doing what a law firm was, which was working me to the bone, right? But I really wanted to prove to college, Apurva, that you also are tier 1 material. So I think that I took that job because of that. And I also that promised me work-life balance, whatever. But I went there. Yeah, it promised me. Cut to 6 months later, I have resigned.
Yeah, of course.
That stint lasted 6 months. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't think you are meant for everything in life. In my first job, my senior partner, I was telling that, that there was a time when he had started working. There was somebody in his team who people were like, oh, this is not a very smart person. But when that person left the team and went elsewhere, they flourished. I think it's that there are some places, even if you are who you are, there are some places where you excel and some places where you don't.
The right plant in the right pot. Both
exactly. So after I resigned, I again went to a law firm because it was I had too little experience to pivot in-house. And even there, I don't think I was very good at it. I was hitting the bare minimum thresholds for them to retain me. But once I did that and I think I learned, I was like, okay, now I have done my time and I need to now switch in-house. And I think the moment I switched in-house, I felt like I was back in my element. I could see myself doing this for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think that is what I was very happy with. But yeah, that's how the career went.
So this is another thing that I figured out sometime around college, right? A lot of students who had very thriving social lives or were considered extroverts, etc. in schools and were very confident with who they were, they go to college and then this shift happens, right? Because they're like, oh, so I'm not the hotshot I thought I was.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm not automatically cool.
Yeah.
You kind of forget how to climb the social ladder. Or academic ladder. For me, it was definitely the social ladder, right? For me, it was a personality thing. I mean, I'm talkative enough to have a bloody podcast for it, that I'm part of. But I remember in first, second, third year of law school, I barely said 5 words. I used to be the type of person in school who was always doing projects. Maitli and I were doing, this event, that event, and when socializing all the time, my hand would shake like this, raising a hand in law school. And it crushes you.
Gaura, did you ever sing sing in college?
No, not until third year.
Yeah, but
Not until third year when
yeah.
when I realized that I am actually fun and funny and somebody who people might actually just enjoy spending time with. What? You know, this sort of realization happens. And then slowly old Gauri had to like claw her way back out. You know,
Yeah.
and then when that happens, you finally know how to reconcile who you were with this new adult world.
Yeah.
And I always wondered if it was a boarding school experience, but a lot of day schoolers who I'd met in law school who weren't necessarily extroverted or popular, etc., in school when they were in school or were, studying college, they flourished.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like at some point in those growing years, which now includes your late teens and early 20s, you need that sort of contrast to be like, oh, I should be at the bottom also sometimes and at the top of the
Yeah.
social rung also sometimes, just to even out, like balance out your personality
Correct.
kind of thing, right? But oh my God, that thing of realizing, I actually felt it like, you're telling me I'm scared to talk to people? Dude, this is the one thing I know how to do. If I can't do this, what's left of me?
Because in law school you have imagine you have full debate competitions,
Yeah.
and now all of these debaters are in one place.
Yeah, and
They're
so it's a
all-
room full of people who have your skill set. What makes you
Exactly.
special?
Exactly.
Yeah. Terrifying.
Terrifying.
I
So-
don't want to relive. Yeah, shit, I don't want to relive
scary.
those at all. But so another thing that I was thinking of in terms of like opposites, right? These kind of like cliches of like extroverts finding their low time, etc. One of the things that I was reminded of is by you and your new husband. And how you guys are, at least from what I've seen, quite the introvert extrovert combo, not unlike me and Nishant.
Yeah.
And then I realized, wait, this is another two-state situation. So
Hmm.
tell me what that whole deal is, how your extrovertedness plays into, because it's not, I mean, you guys are newly married, but you've been dating for a very long time, right? So I'm sure there's the cultural elements, personality elements. How is marriage, Apurva?
So I'll tell you this: Nikhil is not an introvert. I think he's just quieter in comparison to me, because that's because anybody would be, right? like like the man is actually very talkative. Like when you put him in like
Yeah.
a group of his own friends and his
Yeah,
own,
same here. Yeah.
he's like he owns that, and he's like, he's the party of
Yeah.
all of that. But when you bring two of us in the same situation and you have limited amount of audio time, so I may take 80% of it, and he gets a word in from time to time. When he
Yeah.
can interrupt me, I told him that if you need to get a word in, you need to interrupt me.
Yeah.
And I think he started.
Because I'm happy filling space.
I am very happy filling space. I will talk. Like, you want me to? This is a curtain. You want me to talk about it? I will. I'll talk to it if you want me to.
Yeah.
So I think in contrast, like before I met Nikhil, he was introduced to me as an extrovert.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, when I
That's
met him, he was like,
insane.
I am he's fully extroverted. He has his parties. He has a house with 50 people living in it. Like, he was very this thing. I think he just like, did I kill it? I don't know. Yeah, so he's very, but he's still like, we talk quite often. Like, we're very talkative generally. But yes, I do get more words in per minute than he does.
Yeah.
But I think it's who we are. As like, if you know my mother, right? You have now attended our wedding, and you have met his side of the family, and you've met my side of the family.
Yeah.
I come from a family of extroverts.
Yeah.
I-
Actually, a culture of extroverts, I would say.
I
Because your wedding was the first time I came into Varanasi, and I was truly, truly blown away by how much everyone has to say and how philosophical everyone is. Everyone's a poet, bro.
everyone.
How?
So I think even as a family, we are very, very extroverted because we keep talking about everything. Like, I was always against getting married so early.
Hmm.
And I thought, like, you should get married a little later in life, maybe in your 30s, when you're, like, I think more things should be sorted. But then I also realized that I need my family to know this man for him to know me.
Yeah.
So I wanted him to know, because I need you to understand why I'm like this. Because
This is my context.
This is my context. This is the reason I am who I am. Because I met his family very early on, and their household, nobody's screaming. They're just quiet. they're just like talking to each other, like they understand. They're like, yes, yes, that makes sense. And I'm like, what? That's it? That's it ended there? What do you mean? Like, where are the sarcastic
You
comments?
mean we're not having a 20-minute bickering situation about breakfast? How to
How?
digest?
What do you mean? So that's when I understood him. I'm like, okay, he comes from a very quiet environment. Because you come to my house, there is no minute where nobody is yelling at something. And not just, and maybe they're not even yelling at the negative connotation. We just like, we keep yelling as people. So I think that was very different. And as a culture, you're right, we're very, and this boy is a nice Tamil boy, come from a nice, quiet Tamil family. Whenever I called my mom and talked to my mom in front of him, I think he would get anxiety. He's like, what is happening?
Are you all fighting? You're like, no, we're just actually having a nice day.
We're having a lovely conversation. We love each other very much. Thank you. Like, how does one explain that to him? Especially because of the language barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the language barrier, I think, was very, I think,
Mind scrambling.
mind scrambling thing. Because I am a Banaras girl who loves in Hindi.
Yeah.
I remember I've told you this, like I'd come to your wedding and you had sung a song for Nishant. And it was one of the most beautiful, like I loved it. It was beautiful. And I wanted to like sing something on my wedding, right?
Yeah.
But then I kept thinking, I was like, whatever I sing, he won't understand because the man knows no word of Hindi. I wanted to sing Hosh Walon Ko Khabar Kya, like Jagjit Singh. I wanted to sing some like Pehla Nasha Pehla Kumar. Like I wanted to sing like these songs that have shown me what love is. I wanted, like I would have had to print out translations and have it like keep reading while I'm singing it, which is also, So English, I like English, but I don't sing that much in English. It's not.
No, feels are in Hindi, in
Feels
Bollywood.
are in
Hindi and specifically Bollywood also, because you're watching how love happens.
Exactly. So that I think was something I had to come to terms with, that a part of me, maybe he will, like that won't be understood, but I think, well, you get 99%, you don't get 1%.
I've had the opposite experience in the sense that Nishant is the first person I've dated who spoke Kannada like me. It's like, for example, the thing when you learn something in a certain language, to explain it in another language, it's like you don't have the vocabulary for it. Like, I can't imagine that explaining a legal principle is simple in any shape or form in Hindi, even though that's your primary, like your heart speaks that language.
Correct.
Same way, I was like, Nanu ninnu preetistini, I love you. Like, huh? I just couldn't say that. And I would come up with all these situations. Like, if I wanted to say, oh, you're hot, how do I say, how to,
Garam ho.
And so I was like, how to flirt, how to even fight. And so I used to find that so weird in the initial days. Now it's like, it's got its place.
But I think our boarding school was very important for this also, because we had this only English rule, remember? We weren't allowed to speak in our vernacular language.
So you wouldn't exclude anybody in the conversation.
Because of that, I think a good thing it did was I became friends with people who never spoke Hindi, because I was the North Indian there, right? I think that is the reason I think it translated to Nikhil later on, right? Because I fell in love with my friends for the first time in English. Yeah. So I knew, like, if I could talk to like my friends there and I could express to them how much I love them in English, that learning could be transferred here, which is why when I got to know that, okay, Nikhil doesn't speak the language and we just started going out, it wasn't a red flag to me, because I'm like, I've done this before.
Yeah, actually, that's such a great segue to this bit that I wanted to do next. So I've been thinking about all of these like opposites and stuff like that, right? Like the thing we spoke about today, this introvert, extrovert and perception, all that. Yeah. And in, I think, episode 6, I think it was, this Milestones and Meghnad, we were doing this game where we were talking about battery percentages. And I said, it's always that the person who never has phone battery marries the person who's always anxious about charging their phone and keep it. Right? So then I was thinking today, also because you're newly married, I wanted to test out some typical marriage cliches about the equational cliches, right? The first one is this only. The 3% battery person marries the always 90% above battery person, and then they fight for the rest of their life. This is true in my case. I am the 90 plus. And Nishant almost like he will be doing complex things like booking tickets, OTP related stuff when he'll have 1%. And I'll just be watching there like with my heart in my mouth.
This is a almost cliche in our case because my phone is always charging because I'm very scared to leave my house without charge. Like, what if
Yes.
something happens? My phone needs to be minimum 20%.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's not a functional device. Like, that's not the kind of anxiety I want in my life.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
Nikhil
Yeah.
is very comfortable with when I say "Kare, your battery is like 20%, you charge?" He's like, enough. And when we're traveling by auto or something, and his phone has that 20%, why are you on YouTube? We're on our way
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, we're not even on our way back.
Yeah.
Why are you on YouTube?
Okay, the next one is an emotional one, I suppose, as an emotional regulation. I found this cliche to be true in my life, which is that the person who wants to talk through issues immediately marries the person who wants 3 to 5 business days to sort shit out. I am, of course, talk about stuff now. I have my full list of feelings, how it evolved over time and how it is like the culmination of it, and then the reasons and part 1, part 2, part 3 chapters, everything I'm going to tell you. And now you tell me what you feel and we'll discuss and then we'll fall in love all over again. He'll be like, I don't know.
Yes, 150% we are like this because I want to talk about it even while it's happening. Yeah. How are you now? And then I tell him, hey, is there anything you want to say to me in this situation? How are you feeling about the way I reacted to you being an idiot? Like, how are you feeling about it? Well, let's do that. Please tell me how you're feeling about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're right. I'm like, that's it.
I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know?
Yeah.
Your thought happened in your head, no? How will I know? You should know. But yeah, marriage is an interesting beast. I hope you have great fun with it. With that, we move to our last segment, Apurva. Do you have a question for? I usually say Azhar, but I miss Maithili so much today.
No,
but
this is
do you
for
have a
you
question
and
for me?
Mitzi. Get a
Okay,
soundbite.
I will
of-
happily speak on her behalf. Ask.
Okay, done. What was your secret of like a more than a decade long friendship? How did that work for you guys? Like, how did you maintain that for like so long? Like,
Good question. I think we didn't maintain it consistently. That's one thing for sure. There were years in between where we were completely out of touch. So we don't have a formula for how to always be friends, I think. And in those gaps also, it was sometimes gaps because we had, misunderstandings or some kind of disconnect or something like that. Or just lack of context because we were living totally different lives and
Yeah.
learning who we were. But the alignment, rejoining of friendships and lives, etc., I think happened because there were common interests. We weren't just friends because we liked each other. We were friends because we liked to do something together. Even up until this podcast started, Maithili and I were the type of friends who I would send her a text, like 5 days later she would respond, and then like 7 days later I would respond, and we were perfectly fine with that. It wasn't like, oh, for breakfast today. Not interested. But also haven't spoken in 3 months. Dude, I have this major life crisis. Let's go. Right? We were that kind of thing. But it's that the unifying factor is the love to create. So with that, Apurva, thank you so much for coming. This has been self-claps. This has been such a great, fun segment, and also proof to the world that two talkative people can run a podcast in conversation with each other.
I've been looking at all the Instagrams and all the episodes, and I was like, what interesting thing do I have to say? What is there that I have to say that somebody has to listen to, right? Like, because a lot of like I saw the other episode, I'm like, okay, these are interesting people. They seem to have lives. And like one of the reasons I really wanted to come on, and I really was looking forward to it also because I have had conversations with you. I knew where this would go, how this would be, because this is how we talk to each other. I knew I didn't have to perform and be normal.
Great. Thank you so much. And to all of you listeners, you guys, this is our 8th episode. I really hope you all have checked out episodes episodes 1 through 8. I hope we've improved in life a little bit. Audio quality is better. Questions are better. But please do check it out.
Guests are better.
Okay, apparently guests are also better. Self-proclaimed. I'm putting this 100%. I'm definitely leaving this in. And so thank you all for listening to all the crazy nutcases that we have on board. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. Miss you, Maithili. Bye bye.